Hey YouTube family, this is Bill Allenbaugh. I'm making a video testimony of my experience with UFOs and fallen angels before I became a Christian and how I was involved in the UFOlogy. I was heavily deep into UFOs and I had a fascination with them. But I want to set the record straight. I got born again in 2015 in January, a week before I met Dr. Stephen Greer, who's a fraud, by the way. He's a fraud. He's stolen millions of dollars from his Orion Project fundraiser think tank project. And but anyways, my first UFO experience was back in 2001, just before the 9/11 attacks. Actually, it was the night before the 9/11 attacks happened, where um, I was working at Red Lobster as a dishwasher, and I was standing out back in Du Bois, Pennsylvania, at the Red Lobster. We were just talking, and that's where you smoke. And it was after work hours, and we were thinking about what to do. We were either going to go drink or hang out at the mall or something. I don't know. And we spotted this thing hovering in the sky behind the mall. It was probably about a mile tall and maybe a quarter mile wide. It was rectangular and it had no lights on it. And the only reason you could see the object was because of the city, like the mall lights. There are a lot of lights over there by the mall. And we we were talking about it. We were like, well, it's not a hot air balloon, can't be an airplane, and it's definitely not a helicopter. They don't have no lights on it. It's hovering, moving very slowly. Um, the clouds were moving around it. There were very low lying clouds that night, and maybe about 1,000 foot ceiling. And this thing was huge. It went up way above the cloud line, and clouds are moving around it like it was, you know, stationary, like a flagpole. And we decided to just go check it out. We drive over there by the mall and look at it. And we got in our cars and we drove down there by the mall, which was like maybe a mile closer to where this thing was. And there was people that didn't notice and there was people that noticed it, and they were pulling all along the road and pointing and looking up at the sky at this thing. And I was shocked like the next day because like this thing vanished in a cloud that was just too convenient. It was just a really massive cloud that just came out of nowhere, and it just like got swallowed up by the cloud. You couldn't see it anymore. But the next day we didn't see anything in the papers or anything like that, because back then they used a lot of they used newspaper for news and cable, and we didn't have phones back then to record anything like that. And so that was my first UFO experience, and then I went into the Navy, and it wasn't until the war in 2003. I think it was in June when we were bombing Iraq. I was on the Theodore Roosevelt CVN 71, and we were in the Med. We were probably about 50 miles off the coast of Syria, and we were doing night bombing. The Truman was doing cycles with us. We would bomb at night, and the Truman would bomb in the day. And so, my cats. uh, so we're probably about 3 weeks into the war, the bombing, and I was on the flight deck manning the six pack just behind the number one JBD, and we were parking our Hawkeye. It just came back. All the aircraft came back from their strike, and the only thing that was still airborne was our Seahawk at 7 o'clock at 2 miles, and I was standing in the six pack parking our E2, which was facing aft in the six pack behind the number one JBD, and I was manning I was using a blue wand, marking the deck with a light, so where the proper propeller was, and so people didn't walk into the propeller and get killed. And out of nowhere, I just noticed these lights above the port nacelle, and they were coming from our starboard side, from or port to starboard, I mean. And it was there was five yellow lights. They were in a V formation, and they were traveling probably about 500 miles an hour, but completely silent. Even though it's extremely loud on the flight deck, usually you can hear jets fly above the carrier because of the way physics, just the way the sound uh, uh, comes down off the out of the sky. It's really strange. But these things had no physical bodies to them. They had no surface to them at all. They were just these lights, and it was very strange because they didn't have any kind of reflection. Like the lights were bright, and they were probably about 50 feet in diameter, and the formation was in a perfect V, and probably about 200 or 300 feet across, maybe. I don't know. It's really hard to gauge on distance at that altitude, but it was no. I would say probably maybe about 500 or 600 feet distance from tip to tip. But um, I was terrified. Like whenever I seen these things, I was just shocked, and I looked around and there was probably about 400 people that saw these things, and pilots, crew, deck crew, and there was a lot of people that weren't looking at them. They didn't see them, and I kind of lost my composure, and I'm like waving people down to my left that were like behind me and observing the E2, and for some reason they didn't even notice them. But I flagged them down. And I'm like pointing up at the sky. I'm like, what in the f is that? And they were just shocked as I was. And but anyways, they were passing over our carrier. I was noticing that they had no reflection in the canopies, especially the canopy of the F-14 behind me to my back left. And in the water, they had no reflection from the water either. Now they were putting out a lot of light, but that was the strangest thing I noticed, that there was no reflection at all. And as they flew over their carrier. I'm looking and I'm trying to maintain my position, trying not to stumble into the propellers and get killed. Uh, I was about to lose sight of them over our starboard side. The boat was rocking it was listing side to side, very slow, and there was a 14 F-14 behind me, and the deck lifted up, and just as I was about to lose sight of him behind the F-14, the ship went back down, and I could see them going off in the distance. Um, and the far right orb turned red and split away from this formation in the direction of that Seahawk. And then the ship came back up, and I lost sight of him. And I had to get back to my job because I was there guarding the propellers, making sure people don't walk into them. But that was my second UFO encounter, technically third. The first one, I'm not really sure. I'm not even going to explain it. It was very strange. But I got out of the Navy. They told me to just shut up. There's no such thing as UFOs. And but I got out of the Navy just fascinated by this stuff because I knew those weren't airplanes, and people knew they were UFOs, and some people just didn't believe. Their minds are challenged, and they just didn't. They just denied it. And so, and I didn't talk about it too much. I didn't want to get in trouble. And I knew about the secrecy with UFOs back then. There was a lot of paranoia and stigmatism about it. And but now a lot of people today in 2026, a lot of people talk about freely and like it's no big deal. Uh, and I think that's why a lot of people are just thinking about disclosing this stuff. But I jumped down the rabbit hole. I got on the internet and I was all over this UFO stuff, looking up videos on YouTube for years. And it wasn't until so I got out in 2007, and it wasn't until 2015 where I met Dr. Greer, and this was part of a group this contact protocol where he leads a group into meditation where you make contact with these things, these entities. And um, it was in Vero Beach, Florida. It was in January of 2015. Now, it was still really cold back then. It was, we would gather on the beach in these circles and chairs, and we would bundle up in these blankets, and we would meditate. Now, we did a little bit of orientation and training before we did that the day before, and Greer just explained the stuff to us about what we do, and we signed waivers and stuff like that. But my mentor was Ricky Butterfass, who Greer mentioned in his book. Now, I read his book. He denies God. He denies Jesus. Now he talks about God, but he denies Jesus Christ as the Lord God. And but I still wanted to meet him. I had a fascination. Now, the week before that, I got the Holy Spirit. Now, I didn't know it was the Holy Spirit at first. I was sitting right here on my porch, and the God softened my heart. He made me able to forgive. I wasn't able to forgive people before. I was just bitter, and the Holy Spirit came into me after I forgave everyone. And it was right here on my porch where I got born again, but it was a week before I met Greer. Now, I don't know why the Holy Spirit allowed me to experience some of this stuff, because really he had the authority to just tell me no. But he allowed me to go through that experience to warn others that are, completely brainwashed and involved in this stuff. And even Christians are. They're fascinated about UFOs. So I did remote viewing while I was there. Now, I was the only one out of the 26 people that were there that was able to remote view. And I don't know why. Maybe it's a rare gift, but I was able to like appear randomly wherever my mind was thinking of going by just meditating. And the first encounter I had was this female. They call them avions. It's basically a woman that I saw that was, now I know it's a fallen angel, but her skin was all like sky blue, and she had blue hair like cobalt color, and her head was slightly larger than a human's head, and her eyes were like an anime character, but her pupil was like crossed. It had round-ended crosses in her pupil, and it was like a frog's eye, almost like a tree frog's eye, and her eyes were green, but her retina was so big that you couldn't see the whites of her eyes if she looked right at you. Her eyes just looked black, and the only way you could see the whites of her eyes is if she looked away at all, and you could see her white eyes. Now, she was completely naked, and she had normal human genitalia, but this thing was not human. It looked human, but it was not. And these things are very sinister. They hate humans, and their number one mission is to deceive humanity from the truth of the gospel of Christ. Now, I've met, let's see how many variations. I've seen 5 other variations of these creatures, and the second one was a remote view. I'm trying to remember which one it was in order. Uh, I seen these grays that people have seen and talked about a lot, and um, I was remote viewing in our group, and above the Earth. And Earth is round, by the way, just if you're wondering. But I found this craft hovering above our group, observing us from space, and it was a saucer-like craft with a center hole in the middle of it. It was like a normal, like frisbee-shaped craft, symmetrical, curved on the top, and then curved on the bottom. But the hole was like completely straight through, and it was probably about 60 feet in diameter in the center, the hole, and then the outer edge of the craft was probably about 350 feet wide. So it was a pretty big saucer, and it had this strange spiral blue light in the center of it that was coming out the sides of the circle, the hole, and it was spiraling into like a vortex, almost like a portal or something like that in the middle of the craft. And inside the occupants were these grays. Now there was two variations of these grays. There was a 14-foot tall gray, and he had to do a lot of stooping down to walk around in this craft. There was a lot of tall areas and a lot of short areas, and he would stick to like more like the middle of the craft. Um, and I think there was like maybe two or three of the tall ones. And I didn't look all through the craft. I just was like more curious with the tall ones, and there was a bunch of the shorter ones in the craft, and they were like around 4 feet, 4.5 feet tall, like the size of a female human. And no, don't, cat eating grass. No, I don't want her throwing up in my house. Anyways, these things they look like the typical gray head that you see depicted that people have drawn, and but they had I got really close to the face of this one, the 14-foot tall one, and I got more detail on the facial features because I really wanted to observe them very intently, and their nose is very small, but they have like pink, uh, like like a very light hue pink around like the entrance to their nose, and they have white outlines around their facial features, like around their mouth. They have very light gray, like on the inside of their lips is pink, but on like between the pink and the dark gray, there's a light gray. It goes from light pink to light gray and then to dark gray around all their facial features. And these things didn't have any kind of wrinkles, but the earlobes they were very small. You could probably um, they were probably about maybe a quarter of an inch long, just stubbies sticking out of the side of their head. And but they had a huge cranium. They had a huge cranium, very pointy jaw that came down to like a very like an anime character almost, and the typical oval eyes. But around their eyes, like in on the inside of their eyes, like in here, there was like light gray and pink. Like on the bottom parts of their eyes, they had like a little bit of pink. And I don't know how old these things were, but I could see their hatred for me. They knew I was there and they were looking at me. And I don't know how that's possible. Even though that they were in the physical, these things, these are fallen angels. It wasn't until like my last few days that I was there that I started realizing, the Holy Spirit started making me aware that these things are actual fallen angels, and these things are the ones that hate humanity, and they have bred with humans in the past and created Nephilim. And now I don't know how that's possible, how that they are able to mate with the human women, but because they have no male anatomy, they have no genitalia, they're just like flat down there. And not that I noticed anything, but There was another encounter where I'd seen the fallen angels that the Egyptians worshipped, where it was another craft above Earth, between Earth and the Moon, and it was a very large ship. It was probably about 200 or 300 miles across, and I was in this. I just appeared whenever I started remote viewing, in this one room where they grew food, and it was on the outer skirts of the ship. It was on the outer edge, and it was like this slight curve that went on for like as far as you could see, and it went the whole way. I assume it went around the whole outside of the whole ship, and it was just constantly growing food. The floor was it was dirt, but it was on like a conveyor belt type floor, and there would be these arms on, and by the way, the hallway that this thing was in was like dome shaped, and on the other side of the outboard side of the room, there were these arms. They would go and like place a seed, and then they would retract, grab something, place a seed, and retract, and it would just constantly do that back and forth, and because the floor was like moving on this like invisible conveyor system, like the soil would materialize out of this wall, and continuously move, and then it would disappear into like this, I don't know, this black mist on the inside of the inboard wall, and it would just constantly do this over and over again, just recycling this dirt. And these plants would like grow within 30 seconds to maturity, and then there'd these other arms on the inboard side that would like clip them, and then the plants would go down this like little porthole, like a just like a like in like a vortex. And I was observing that. I'm like, I was just completely stunned by what I was seeing, because like, I mean, there's so much food being generated right here. I'm like, this would feed, you know, the whole Earth's population. And if we had that kind of technology, there'd never be any kind of hunger. But I looked up on the ceiling. There was this round um, ball, like this. It was like half embedded in the wall. It was like an observatory room. It was like this transparent, tinted black glass observatory, and there was beings in there observing the production, making sure everything was working. And then there was this robot that was hovering, and it was going up and down. It was like it was levitating. It was like a capsule shaped robot that had two arms on both sides, and they were retracted like this, and it would travel up and down this hallway. It came flying down, and it went up the hallway somewhere, to do something. I don't know what it was doing, but I looked directly behind me, and there was a doorway, an open doorway, that was probably about maybe 4 or 5 feet wide, and it was domed at the top. It was shaped almost like those shapes you see on a Lutheran church. It came to a point. It was like it's shaped like this on both sides symmetrically, and the now everything was white on the ship, except for like some decor that I saw in these tunnels. In these tunnels, that in the doorway went, the tunnel went for like hundreds of miles in one direction. It was just a straight tunnel. And I suspect that if you were to try to walk the length of this tunnel, you would probably die from hunger or thirst. It was just that long. You would never make it to where you're trying to go. But it had technology in the ceiling that it would read your mind and teleport you to where you were thinking of going. And my thought was to just go where all these entities are. And uh, it took me to this large room in the very center of the ship. And it was a completely round room with a space, um, like opening. It had like a transparent glass ceiling, that you could see into space from, and it was just so pretty. It was just like the prettiest thing I've ever seen. Like to see into space and see all the stars. And there were these UFO like craft that were like diamond shaped. There was this large glowing amber diamond shaped object like vibrating outside this window. Um, and that because this is the first thing I noticed. I didn't even look around the room what was inside the room, but it was like because I was shocked when my eyes came back down. But it exploded and broke into like smaller, tiny miniature selves of itself, like these tiny little diamond-shaped amber objects, and then they all came back together and formed a large diamond-shaped object. It was just so strange. Um, and but then I started looking at the ceiling, and it was like this strange pattern of like web and just randomized structural members that held the glass into place. Now the glass was really thick, and but it was like this reinforcement of the glass, and I started looking down along the edges, and I just happened to notice that there were like maybe about 1,000 of these entities, these creatures, staring at me. They were all in this one room. For somehow they just knew I was there, and they the tunnel that I came through that teleported me to this room uh, came out at an angle into the circular room. It was like not in the center, but it was to the side. And I was like looking around, and they kind of stood to the side and let me walk in between them. And but they were all standing through this one room, probably about 1,000 of these things, and they all looked like they had heads of snakes. They had the head of a snake, and but it was the heads of these things were probably about 2 feet wide and about a foot tall. So they were like almost looked like cobras, and they looked exactly like the snake on the pharaoh's head, like the snakes that the pharaohs would use in their decorations. And they wore garbs that looked exactly like what the Egyptians would wear. Uh, they had this. They had a human torso, but very skinny arms. They're like twigs. Their arms were very skinny. And oh, before I almost forget, um, I wanted to mention that the 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 ship that these things made, it looked organic. It looked like when I touched the walls inside the hallway, it had the texture of like a seashell. And I don't know this for sure, but I suspect that maybe this might have been some kind of grown biological grown ship that they had planned out and they built from organic matter. Yeah, but it all looked like it was a seashell, and it was a very strong ship, I guess. But they lived in this thing, and so. But getting back to the fallen angel, this thing had 1 foot. It waddled on this large foot like. Um, it almost looked like it had like a leaf for a foot in the back because uh, it was like this in the front, like the head would come down, and then in the back, in the very reverse, the foot would be in the back. I can't bend my hands like that, but um, anyways, but they were probably about maybe 7 feet tall, all of them, and so but they had these gold garbs that went around the back of their head, and they came down over their shoulders, and they came down to almost their waist. These garbs, and my cats. Uh, but yeah, they had this strange. It was pretty. This gold garb that came down over them, but their skin was like this dark Um, it was like a dark tone. I'm trying to think of the color. It wasn't really a brown or more like a green. It was like a dark green color to their skin, and they had in their armpits was like a lighter color. It was like maybe like a light beige. It was like a beige color in their armpits. Um, but they had these weird pants, like almost like skirts around their waist, and but it covered their reproductive organs. I guess they had reproductive organs, but they covered that area down there. And but as I was walking through this group of these things, I noticed that there was an enormous tree in the middle of this room, and it stood up probably about like to the ceiling, which is probably, I'd say, about 200 or 300 feet tall. This room was wide. It was probably about maybe 1,200 feet in diameter in circle, and the tree was probably about maybe 250 feet tall, and the base of the tree was probably about, I'm trying to think. It was probably about maybe 15 feet wide. It was an old tree, and it was in the middle of this raised floor, but it had water in the and like it had this strange bowl shaped center, and there was water in the center of this around the tree roots, and the tree it branched out, and the tree branches reached out probably about maybe about 600 feet in both directions. Or no, maybe not, maybe 600 feet. Probably about 400 feet, I'd say. On each side, it was like 400 feet in both directions, and it almost reached the walls. Um, and But I walked up to like the center of the room to this tree, and there was like this enormous flower sticking out of this the base of this tree in the water, and there were steps. There were 3 steps that went up to this flower, and this flower was intelligent. It had like a an awareness to it. It was very strange, and it knew I was approaching it, and so it was basically like a bulb at the time when I saw it. And once I was getting up closer to it, it started like opening up, and it was glowing almost like the plants in the movie Avatar. It had these brilliant lights all over it that had like the stems would, like the petals would glow, and inside each of the petals there was 5 petals that opened up, and there was thousands of these tiny miniature flowers that looked just like the larger flower. There were 5 petals, and on the tips of the flowers, like the flower petals on the big part were like pointing. They were like they came to a sharp point, and they were probably about maybe a foot wide at the base where it met connected to the stem. And from the inner part of the petal, there were yellow. I'm trying to remember. It was yellow and red, 5 pointed flowers, star flowers, black on the inside, but glowing red on the inside and yellow on the tips. And like the flowers were different colors as you looked up to the tips of the flower, and it went from a red to a blue. Very pretty to see. And but in the center of this flower were these pointy stems that came out like, almost like a pointy weed, but they were glowing this white and yellow color. It was very pretty. And but as I walked up to this thing, the vision or whatever the remote view ended. I just called it quits because I seen enough that I wanted to leave. And I don't even know really the purpose of this video. I just wanted to make it because there's a lot of disclosure about this stuff, and there's a lot of deception. There were other ET, fallen angels that I had seen. and a lot of other different crazy crafts that I was on board. In fact, I was on another planet where another Earth-like planet, and I'm not going to get into that. Uh, but and there were millions of spaceship on this planet that they had ready for like a war. They were preparing for a war, and they were building millions of these saucer-shaped ships. But I didn't see any entities on on that planet. But it was very similar to Earth, different vegetation, but in appearance very likeness to the trees on Earth, like pines. But anyways, there's there's going to be a great deception. There's going to be a lot of people lying about these creatures. They're not aliens. They're not alien to Earth. They originated from Earth and they built ships and left Earth. That's my take on it. That's what I've learned. Um, and there's still evidence of their existence that was left here on Earth that they used technology wise to leave Earth. They built pyramids and stuff like that. Now, I don't know the true purpose of the pyramids. I suspect maybe electricity. They did need electricity to operate tools and build some of these craft. But they built craft here on Earth to leave Earth. And so I just want to tell you that fallen angels, there's a difference between a fallen angel and a demon. Now, some of this stuff people are seeing are demons, but a lot of the stuff, the most of it, are fallen angels. These craft that they have physical appearances to, where you can see surfaces, reflections, shiny vehicles. These are manned either by they're either drones or they're manned by actual fallen angels. I've seen saucer craft fly over Vero Beach, Florida, while I was there, and with my own eyes, and I'd seen a triangle shaped craft, and that was like 5 miles wide. It was huge, an enormous, just triangular ship that reappeared and then materialized and then vanished. And but uh, these things can be killed. These things are very dangerous. They hate humanity. They hate. There's a lot of people saying, "Oh, they're benevolent and they're here visiting us. They're protecting Earth and they have our best intentions in mind." And they're part of this galactic federation of sorts. That is a complete lie. That is an absolute lie. Um, these things hate humans so much. They kill people all the time. They abduct people, kill them. I don't know what they do with the bodies of these people. They probably experiment on them or whatever. Who knows? But it wouldn't surprise me that they've taken the genetic uh, blueprints of humanity, twisted it and altered it in some way, and made other humans that serve them in some way, or like the blondes that you people have explained. I think those are just humans that have been genetically bred to be slaves to these things, and so it gets really dark when you start researching these UFOs. They're not benevolent. Um, they kill people all the time. They hate humans, and but their number one mission is to deceive humanity from the truth of the gospel of Christ. Because when people learn that these things are actually real, um, they think that why didn't God explain this stuff in the Bible? They start losing faith. Oh, God, He's keeping this stuff secret. It's in Genesis. It talks about the fallen angels, how they came to earth, and the sons of God. And so, anyways, I want to leave there. The video is a little bit long, 40 minutes almost. Uh, but stay safe, stay in the faith. This stuff is real, and this is coming from a born again believer, born again Christian. And my experience on these entities. So to take heart and not to lose trust in the Lord. The scriptures explain that this stuff happened anyways, and I'm going to leave it there. Until next time, I may make another testimony of my experiences with these UFOs. about the other planet. But I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.